3 years ago, I was standing in the pouring rain outside our Chicago apartment building, my belongings stuffed into garbage bags because my brother couldn't even spare proper boxes. 30 days is generous, Liv, he'd said, casually sipping his coffee while telling me I needed to find somewhere else to live. I need the space for Emily. We're getting serious. Today, I sat behind a polished mahogany desk on the 47th floor of the Archer Tower, reviewing resumes for my new executive assistant position. The irony isn't lost on me as I stare at the next candidate's name on my schedule, Marcus Mitchell. My brother has no idea he's about to interview with the sister he once deemed a financial burden, now the youngest vice president in Vertex Innovations history. Life has a fascinating way of bringing things full circle. But this isn't a story about revenge. It's about resilience, self-discovery, and the unexpected paths that lead us to who we're meant to become. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I'll never forget the morning that changed everything. It was a crisp October day in Chicago, the kind where the autumn leaves created a vibrant carpet across Lincoln Park. I had just pulled an all-nighter finishing client presentations for my entry-level marketing job at Glendale Media, a small agency where I'd been working since graduating from Northwestern 2 years earlier. The apartment I shared with my older brother Marcus wasn't fancy, but it was in a decent neighborhood, close enough to the lake for weekend runs and walking distance. To the Red Line. We'd moved in together after our parents relocated to Arizona for retirement, a pragmatic decision to split the astronomical Chicago rent, while I chipped away at my student loans and Marcus pursued his MBA. That morning, I shuffled into our kitchen, desperate for caffeine, only to find Marcus and his girlfriend Emily already there, looking suspiciously comfortable and exchanging meaningful glances. "Hey, sleep-deprived zombie," Marcus joked, sliding a mug across the counter. "We need to talk." Something in his tone made me pause. Marcus had always been the responsible one in our family. 4 years older, always planning, always 3 steps ahead. Our parents had drummed into him a sense of duty as the firstborn, and he'd taken to the role with perhaps too much enthusiasm. "What's up?" I asked, immediately noticing how Emily avoided eye contact. "Em and I have been talking," he began, using that authoritative voice he'd perfected since childhood. "We're getting serious, and it makes sense for her to move in. The lease renewal is coming up next month." I nodded slowly, sipping my coffee. "Okay, so we'll need to adjust the rent split 3 ways? I can look at the smaller bedroom if you guys want the—" "No, Liv," Marcus interrupted. "I meant she's moving in, and you need to find your own place." The mug nearly slipped from my hand. "What?" "This was our plan. We agreed I'd stay until I paid off at least half my loans. That was our deal." Marcus sighed, exchanging another look with Emily. "Plans change. You're 25 now." "I'm still 24 for another month," I corrected automatically. "And it's time you stood on your own 2 feet. I've been subsidizing you for too long." "Subsidizing me?" My voice rose. "I pay my share of rent. I buy groceries. I even took on utilities last summer when you were between jobs." Emily cleared her throat. "Marcus just feels, and I agree, that you've become too dependent. It's not healthy for any of us." The audacity of this near stranger weighing in on my living situation made my blood boil. Emily had been dating my brother for all of 8 months, yet somehow felt entitled to an opinion on my financial circumstances. "I see," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "And when exactly am I supposed to be out?" "The lease is up November 1st, so you have about 30 days, Marcus replied, his tone suggesting he was being extraordinarily generous. "That should be plenty of time to find a room somewhere, maybe with some of your college friends?" 30 days. In Chicago's rental market. With my entry-level salary and student loans that consumed nearly half my monthly income, the impossibility of the situation crashed over me like a wave. "You know what this means financially for me?" I said quietly. I can barely make ends meet as it is." Marcus shrugged, his expression hardening in that familiar way when he'd made up his mind. "Maybe this is the push you need, Liv. You've always been comfortable taking the easier path. Remember how Mom and Dad had to practically drag you to college, orientation while your friends were all excited? Or how did you settle for that marketing job when you could have pushed harder for something better?" Each word stung like salt in an open wound. Yes, I'd been anxious about college. Yes, I'd taken the first job offered after dozens of rejections in a tough economy. But Marcus was recasting my normal life challenges as character flaws. "That's not fair," I whispered. "Life isn't fair," he countered. "I'm doing you a favor, even if you can't see it yet. Sometimes people need a push out of the nest." I looked at the apartment we'd shared for nearly 3 years. The small bookshelf where our childhood favorites still mingled. The framed photo of us with our parents at my graduation. The silly souvenir magnets on the refrigerator from our family vacations. This wasn't just an apartment. It was the last vestige of our shared history. And Marcus was casually dismantling it for a woman. He'd known less than a year. "I have to get to work," I said finally, gathering my things. "We'll talk about this later." But there was no real discussion to be had. Marcus had made his decision. I spent that day at work in a fog, barely managing to present my projects to clients while my mind raced through impossible housing calculations. By evening, I'd cycled through disbelief, hurt, anger, and finally, a strange sense of clarity. That night, as Marcus and Emily went out for dinner, I sat alone in my soon-to-be former bedroom and opened my laptop. If I needed to stand on my own, as Marcus so confidently proclaimed, then perhaps it was time to reimagine what that could look like. Not just surviving, but thriving on my terms. I stayed up until 3 a.m., not tearfully browsing apartment listings, as Marcus might have expected, but researching something else entirely: the emerging field of digital transformation consulting, where my marketing background and creative problem-solving might actually be valued. By morning, I had a plan, not just for the next 30 days, but for the next 3 years. What Marcus saw as pushing me out of the nest would become the catalyst for a journey neither of us could have anticipated. Sometimes being forced to the breaking point is exactly what we need to discover how strong we truly are. The next morning, with dark circles under my eyes and a new determination in my heart, I arrived at Glendale Media an hour early. The office was quiet, just the way I needed it to be for what I was about to do. I'd spent the night researching digital transformation consulting, a field that combined marketing strategy with technology implementation to help traditional businesses adapt to the digital age. My marketing degree and 2 years of hands-on experience gave me a foundation, but I needed more specialized knowledge to make the leap. As I settled at my desk with a triple-shot espresso, I pulled up the application for Skyline Consulting's Digital Innovation Fellowship, a competitive 6-month program that accepted just 20 candidates nationwide. The deadline was tomorrow, and the program began in exactly 34 days. The timing wasn't coincidental. If accepted, the fellowship came. With a modest stipend and temporary housing in Boston, it would solve my immediate housing crisis and potentially open doors I hadn't previously considered. The catch? I would need to quit my current job, move to a new city, and compete against candidates with far more impressive resumes than mine. "You're here early." I jumped at the voice, minimizing my browser window. Diane Reynolds, Glendale's creative director, stood in my doorway with an amused expression. At 42, Diane was everything I aspired to be: confident, respected, and unapologetically brilliant. She'd built her career from scratch after dropping out of college, and rumor had it she'd turned down job offers from major agencies to stay at our small firm. "Just catching up on some work," I said, trying to sound casual. Diane's eyes narrowed slightly. "Funny, because your Prescott presentation yesterday looked like it was thrown together by someone who'd rather be anywhere else. That's not like you, Olivia." My cheeks burned with embarrassment. The Prescott account was our biggest client, and I'd been distracted during the entire presentation. "I'm sorry," I said. "Personal stuff. It won't happen again." Diane stepped into my office and closed the door. "Want to talk about it? And don't say I'm fine, because we both know that's corporate speak for I'm drowning, but too proud to admit it." Something about her directness broke through my carefully constructed composure. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. Marcus, kicking me out, my financial situation, and my late-night plan to apply for the Skyline Fellowship. When I finished, Diane was quiet for a long moment. "So you'd leave Glendale? Just like that?" "I don't have many options," I admitted. "And honestly, I've hit a ceiling here. We both know the promotion track is glacial, and I can't afford to wait years for a salary increase." Diane tapped her fingers on my desk, a habit she had when thinking deeply. "What if there was another option? One that didn't involve throwing yourself into the shark tank of management consulting without any experience?" "I'm listening." "Archer, media is looking for someone to head up their new digital marketing division in New York. It's a director-level position, ambitious for someone your age, but not impossible." My heart skipped a beat. Archer Media was one of the fastest-growing digital publishers in the country, recently acquired by Vertex Innovations, a tech giant expanding into media. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked cautiously. "I'm nowhere near qualified for a director position." Diane smiled. "Because the hiring manager is Taylor Bennett, my former mentee. Because you have raw talent that's being wasted on local accounts. And because I recognize that look in your eyes, it's the same one I had when I realized I needed to bet on myself or watch my potential slowly die." She pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. "I just texted Taylor that she should expect your application. The listing hasn't gone public yet. It will next week. That gives you a head start." My mind raced. New York, director level, a salary that would actually allow me to live independently. It seemed too good to be true. "This is incredibly generous," I said. "But why would they hire me over candidates with actual leadership experience?" "Because what they need isn't just experience, it's vision," Diane replied. "Anyone can learn processes and protocols. Not everyone can spot opportunities others miss or connect dots across different industries. That presentation you did last month on the future of interactive marketing, that's the kind of thinking they need." I remembered that presentation, a side project I'd worked on after hours, analyzing how gaming mechanics could transform traditional marketing campaigns. My colleagues had politely applauded, but most thought it was too experimental for our conservative clients. "I don't even have a place to live right now," I said, the reality of my situation crashing back. "How am I supposed to relocate to New York?" "The position comes with relocation assistance," Diane said. "And Taylor owes me enough favors that I could probably convince her to expedite the process if you get the job." She paused. "But, Olivia, you'd need to nail this interview. This isn't entry-level where enthusiasm compensates for gaps in experience. You'd need to come with a concrete vision for their digital strategy." My mind was already racing ahead, ideas forming faster than I could process them. "I think I can do that." "Good." Diane stood up. "Now, I'm going to need that Prescott presentation, redone by noon. Your personal crisis doesn't give you a pass on delivering excellent work, especially if you want a recommendation from me." She headed for the door, but turned back. "And Olivia? Don't tell anyone else about this opportunity. Office politics can get ugly when people feel leapfrogged." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. After Diane left, I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Then I opened a new document and began outlining my application for Archer Media. By lunchtime, I had completely reworked the Prescott presentation and sketched the bones of what would become my digital vision for Archer. That evening, I returned to to the apartment to find Marcus and Emily cuddled on the couch, looking through apartment listings for themselves. "Hey," Marcus said casually. "How was work?" "Interesting," I replied, heading straight to my room. I didn't have the energy to make small talk while they planned their future in the space that was evicting me from mine. Inside my room, I locked the door and pulled out my laptop. The Archer Media application would require all my focus. I stayed up until 2 a.m., crafting a comprehensive digital strategy that combined influencer partnerships, interactive content platforms, and AI-driven personalization, all areas where Archer had yet to establish dominance. The following day, I submitted both applications, the Skyline Fellowship as my backup plan, and the Archer Media position as my moonshot. 2 paths forward, neither guaranteed, but both representing escape routes from my current predicament. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into a frantic routine. During the day, I handled my Glendale projects with renewed vigor, determined to leave a strong impression if I ended up needing Diane's recommendation. Evenings were spent apartment hunting in case both opportunities fell through, and researching New York's neighborhoods and cost of living for the slim chance the Archer position materialized. Marcus noticed my increased absence, but seemed to interpret it as acceptance of the situation. "Found any good leads?" he'd ask occasionally, his tone suggesting he was fulfilling some brotherly obligation to care about my housing crisis. "Working on it," I'd reply vaguely, unwilling to share my plans. Something had shifted in me since that morning in Diane's office. I didn't want Marcus's advice or approval anymore. For the first time, I was charting a course completely independent of his influence. 18 days after submitting my application, I received an email from Taylor Bennett at Archer Media requesting a video interview. My hands shook so badly I could barely click the calendar link to schedule it. The interview was set for the following Tuesday at 9 a.m. I would need to call in sick to Glendale. The weekend before the interview, Marcus cornered me in the kitchen. "Liv, it's been nearly 3 weeks. The lease renewal is due next week and you haven't said anything about where you're moving. I need to know your plan." I measured my words carefully. "I'm working on something that might take me out of Chicago entirely. I should know by the end of next week." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "Out of Chicago? What are you talking about? Your job is here." "For now," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Things change." His expression flickered between confusion and skepticism. "Is this a reaction to the apartment situation? Because throwing away your job security out of spite isn't a smart move." The condescension in his tone would have crushed me weeks ago. Now, it merely reinforced my resolve. "This isn't about you, Marcus. It's about what I want for my career, which, believe it or not, doesn't revolve around your opinions." He stared at me as if seeing someone unfamiliar. "Where would you even go? And with what money?" "I guess we'll find out soon," I said, walking away before he could interrogate me further. Tuesday morning arrived with a mixture of anticipation and terror. I set up my laptop in my bedroom, having arranged a backdrop of neatly organized bookshelves, the only part of my increasingly packed-up room that looked professional. Dressed in a navy blazer with a simple blouse, I looked more confident than I felt as Taylor Bennett's face appeared on my screen. "Olivia Mitchell," she said with a warm smile. "Diane speaks very highly of you, which doesn't happen often. Let's see if you live up to the hype." What followed was the most challenging 2 hours of my professional life. Taylor grilled me on everything from content monetization strategies to management philosophy. She presented real problems Archer was facing and asked for on-the-spot solutions. She questioned assumptions in my proposal and pushed me to defend my recommendations with data. By the end, I was mentally exhausted but exhilarated. This was the kind of challenge I'd been craving without realizing it. Work that demanded everything I had, and then asked for more. "Well, Olivia," Taylor said finally, "you're definitely not the conventional choice for this role. You're younger than we anticipated, and your leadership experience is thin. She paused, studying me through the screen. But your strategic thinking is exceptional, and your digital vision aligns with where we need to go. My heart pounded as I waited for the verdict. I'd like you to come to New York next week for a final round of interviews with the executive team, she continued. If that goes well, we might have a place for you at Archer. I'll have HR contact you with details about flights and accommodations. It took every ounce of professionalism not to scream with joy. Thank you for the opportunity, I managed. I look forward to meeting the team. After ending the call, I allowed myself exactly 1 minute of ecstatic dancing around my bedroom before reality set in. I hadn't secured the job yet, and I still had no guarantee of solving my housing crisis. But for the first time since Marcus had delivered his eviction notice, I felt a surge of genuine hope. That evening, as I researched Archer's executive team in preparation for the next round, my phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Taylor called. Consider me impressed. Don't screw up the final round. I smiled at her characteristic bluntness. Then another text came through, this one from an unfamiliar number. This is Anna from Skyline Consulting. Congratulations on being selected for our Digital Innovation Fellowship. Please call to discuss next steps. 2 paths had suddenly opened before me. Now I just had to decide which one to take. 2 opportunities, 2 cities, 2 completely different trajectories for my career. The Skyline Fellowship offered security, a clear program with defined parameters, temporary housing included, and the prestigious consulting background that would open doors throughout my career. The Archer Media position was riskier, a director role I wasn't objectively qualified for, in the most competitive city in America, with expectations that would test my limits daily. I closed my eyes, thinking about the person I'd been just 3 weeks ago, someone who played it safe, who accepted her brother's assessment of her capabilities, who never reached beyond what seemed reasonably attainable. That version of me would choose Skyline without hesitation. But I wasn't that person anymore. I called Anna at Skyline the next morning and respectfully declined the fellowship, thanking her for the opportunity, but explaining I had decided to pursue another direction. She seemed surprised. Apparently, few people turned down Skyline, but wished me luck. With that door closed, I threw everything into preparing for the final round at Archer. I used a sick day at Glendale to fly to New York the following Monday, boarding the plane with nothing but a carry-on suitcase and a laptop bag filled with notes and strategy documents. New York greeted me with characteristic indifference. Crowded, fast-paced, overwhelming in its scale and energy. The hotel Archer had arranged was in Midtown, sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a vertigo-inducing view of the city below. I spent that evening rehearsing my presentation and researching every member of the executive team I would face the next day. Morning arrived too quickly. Dressed in the one truly professional outfit I owned, a charcoal pencil skirt and matching blazer I'd splurged on for college graduation, I made my way to Archer Media's headquarters, a gleaming tower in Hudson Yards that seemed to touch the clouds. The reception area buzzed with purposeful activity, everyone moving with the confident stride of people who knew exactly where they belonged in the world. I gave my name to the receptionist, who directed me to the 35th floor. The elevator ride gave me just enough time to question every decision that had led me to this moment, before the doors opened to reveal a stunning office space with panoramic views of the city. Ms. Mitchell, a polished woman in her 50s, approached with an outstretched hand. I'm Rebecca Hargrove, VP of Operations. We're set up in the boardroom. Everyone's eager to meet you. The everyone turned out to be 6 executives seated around a massive glass table, including Taylor Bennett and the CEO of Archer Media, James Wilson. Their combined experience probably totaled more years than I'd been alive. I forced a confident smile, remembering Diane's advice. They're not looking for someone who knows everything. They're looking for someone who isn't afraid to figure it out. Good morning. I began, connecting my laptop to the presentation screen. Thank you for the opportunity to share my vision for Archer Media's digital future. For the next 45 minutes, I outlined a comprehensive strategy that would position Archer at the intersection of traditional publishing and innovative digital experiences. I discussed audience segmentation, content monetization, and the integration of emerging technologies like augmented reality and interactive storytelling. When I finished, there was a moment of silence that stretched just long enough to make me nervous. Then James Wilson leaned forward. Ms. Mitchell, your proposal is ambitious. Some might say unrealistically so, given our current infrastructure and the competitive landscape. I nodded, anticipating this challenge. Ambitious, yes, but incrementalism won't distinguish Archer in a crowded market. The strategy I've outlined can be implemented in phases, beginning with the highest impact, lowest resource initiatives to build momentum and demonstrate value. And you believe you're the person to lead this transformation? Asked a woman I recognized as the Chief Revenue Officer. Your background is primarily in traditional marketing for local clients. It was the question I'd been dreading, the one that highlighted the gap between my experience and the role's requirements. But something about being 3,000 miles from Chicago, from Marcus and his low expectations, freed me to answer with unexpected conviction. My background has given me unique insights into how traditional and digital strategies can complement each other, I replied. I've consistently identified opportunities that others missed because they were too entrenched in conventional thinking. What I lack in years of experience, I make up for in vision and adaptability. I paused, then added something I hadn't planned to say. Archer needs someone who can envision and build the future, not just maintain the status quo. I'm that person. The room fell silent again. Taylor caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod of approval. The conversation shifted to specific questions about implementation timelines, resource allocation, and how I would structure the new department. With each answer, I felt more certain that this was where I belonged, in a room where ideas mattered more than age or tenure. After nearly 3 hours, Rebecca showed me out, promising they would be in touch within the week. I left the building, in a daze, simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. Whatever the outcome, I had given everything I had. Back at my hotel, I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from Marcus and a text that read simply, "Need to know your move-out date. Call me." I ignored it, too mentally drained to deal with his demands. 2 days later, I was back in Chicago, pretending everything was normal at Glendale while internally calculating how quickly I could pack up my life if the Archer offer came through. Marcus had become increasingly agitated about my vague responses regarding my moving plans, especially after I declined to view an apartment he'd found in a neighborhood I'd always disliked. "It's almost like you're deliberately being difficult," he complained over dinner that night, one of the few times we'd been home at the same time. "The lease is up in 9 days, Liv. You need to be realistic." I pushed my food around my plate. "I told you I'm working on something. I just need a few more days." "Working on what? Some mysterious plan you won't share with anyone? This isn't like you, Liv. You've always been practical." I met his gaze steadily. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe being practical has just been code for letting other people decide what I'm capable of. Marcus sighed dramatically. "If you don't have a plan by Sunday, I'm going to start moving your things to storage. Emily and I have already signed the new lease, and we need to start painting before moving in." The ultimatum hung in the air between us. 4 days. I had 4 days for Archer to make a decision that would determine the entire course of my future. Friday. Morning. I was midway through a client call when my cell phone lit up with a New York number. My heart jumped into my throat, but I forced myself to finish the call professionally before stepping into an empty conference room to return the missed call. "Olivia Mitchell? This is Rebecca Hargrove from Archer Media." My hand tightened around the phone. "Hello, Ms. Hargrove. Thank you for calling back." I'll get right to it, she said briskly. We were impressed with your presentation and your responses during the interview. Your vision aligns with where we need to take Archer's digital presence, though we have some concerns about your management experience. My stomach sank. This sounded like the beginning of a rejection. However, she continued, we believe you have the strategic thinking and innovative approach we need. We'd like to offer you the position of Director of Digital Strategy, with a 6-month onboarding period working closely with our senior leadership team. After that period, assuming all goes well, you would transition to full directorial responsibilities. Time seemed to stop. Thank you. I'm honored. The role would require you to relocate to New York within the next 3 weeks. The compensation package includes relocation assistance and temporary housing while you find a permanent residence. Do you think that timeline would work for you? 3 weeks, 9 days longer than Marcus had given me. The symmetry was almost poetic. That timeline works perfectly, I replied, struggling to keep my voice professional when I wanted to shout with joy. I can be in New York as soon as you need me. Excellent. HR will email you the formal offer letter and details today. We're excited to have you join Archer, Olivia. After hanging up, I allowed myself exactly 1 minute of private celebration, a silent scream and fist pump in the empty conference room, before composing myself and returning to my desk. I needed to plan my exit from Glendale professionally, despite the urge to run through the office announcing my news. I scheduled a meeting with Diane for that afternoon, wanting her to be the first to know. Her office door was open when I arrived, and she waved me in without looking up from her computer. If this is about the Johnson account, I already approved the... She stopped mid-sentence when she saw my expression. You got it. It wasn't a question. I got it, I confirmed, unable to suppress my smile any longer. Director of Digital Strategy, starting in 3 weeks. 6-month onboarding period, then full directorial responsibilities. Diane leaned back. In her chair, a mixture of pride and sadness crossing her face. Well, damn. I was hoping you'd fail miserably so I wouldn't lose my best junior strategist, but I can't say I'm surprised. She stood up and came around her desk to give me a quick, uncharacteristic hug. Congratulations, Olivia. You earned this. Thank you for the recommendation, I said. I wouldn't have known about the opportunity without you. All I did was open a door. You walked through it and impressed the hell out of them all by yourself. She returned to her chair. Now, let's talk about transition. I assume you'll give 2 weeks' notice. We spent the next hour working out how to hand off my clients and projects. By the end of the day, I had submitted my formal resignation to HR and begun organizing my files for whoever would take over my accounts. That evening, I returned to the apartment with a strange sense of calm. The uncertainty that had plagued me for weeks was gone, replaced by a clear path forward. When I heard Marcus's key in the lock, I was ready. Hey, he said, surprised to find me sitting at the kitchen table waiting for him. Everything okay? Everything's great, I replied. I wanted to let you know I'll be completely moved out by the end of next week. His eyebrows shot up. Really? You found a place? Where? I allowed myself a small smile. New York. New York? He repeated, clearly thinking he'd misheard. What are you talking about? I've accepted a position as Director of Digital Strategy at Archer Media. I start in 3 weeks. Marcus stared at me as if I'd announced I was moving to Mars. Director? At Archer Media? That's not possible. You're a junior marketer at a local agency. The dismissal in his tone would have crushed me a month ago. Now, it merely confirmed I was making the right choice. I'm whatever I decide to be, Marcus. And starting next month, I'll be building and leading the digital division for one of the fastest-growing media companies in the country. I stood up, gathering the research materials I'd been reviewing. I've already ordered packing supplies. I won't need any help. As I walked past him toward my bedroom, he caught my arm gently. Liv, wait. I'm I'm confused. How did this happen? When did you even apply for this job? For a moment, I considered brushing him off, letting him wonder about the transformation that had occurred right under his nose. But despite everything, he was still my brother. The day after you told me I needed to move out, I said simply. Sometimes people need a push out of the nest, right? His face registered the recognition of his own words coming back to him. For once, Marcus Mitchell was completely speechless. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind. By day, I meticulously transitioned my Glendale clients to colleagues, creating detailed handover documents and introducing them to their new account managers. By night, I sorted through 5 years of post-college life, deciding what to bring to New York and what to leave behind. It was surprising how little I actually needed to keep. Most of my furniture had come with the apartment or belonged to Marcus. My wardrobe, filled with business casual basics appropriate for a small Chicago agency, seemed woefully inadequate for a director position in New York. I donated 3/4 of my clothes, keeping only the best pieces and setting aside a portion of my signing bonus for a professional wardrobe upgrade. Marcus oscillated between disbelief and awkward attempts at support. He'd stop by my room while I was packing to ask stilted questions about my new job or offer unsolicited advice about New York living costs. You should know that you'll need at least 3 roommates to afford anything decent in Manhattan, he informed me over breakfast 1 week before my departure. Even with whatever they're paying you. I continued buttering my toast, not bothering, to mention that my new salary was nearly triple what I'd been making at Glendale, plus a performance bonus. Actually, Archer provides temporary housing for the first 3 months while I find my own place. It's part of the relocation package. Relocation package, he repeated, as if I'd said something in a foreign language. For an entry-level position? Director of Digital Strategy isn't entry-level, Marcus. I took a sip of coffee, enjoying the brief flash of discomfort on his face. It's a senior leadership role reporting directly to the CMO. His brow furrowed. I still don't understand how. You got this job. Did you exaggerate your experience? Because that could backfire spectacularly, Liv. The implication that I couldn't have earned the position legitimately stung, but I refused to let him diminish this achievement. They hired me because of my digital strategy vision and innovative approach. Taylor Bennett, the VP who recruited me, specifically said they were looking for fresh thinking, not just someone with the standard resume. Marcus looked unconvinced, but dropped the subject. That evening, Emily came over with a housewarming gift, a bottle of champagne for them to enjoy in their newly renovated apartment after I left. The thoughtlessness was so perfect it was almost comical. My final night in Chicago arrived faster than expected. My room was empty, except for 2 suitcases and a carry-on bag holding everything I would take to my new life. Marcus had gone out with friends, leaving me alone in the apartment that had been my home for 3 years. I walked through each room, memories floating up with each step, holiday dinners at the dining table, movie nights on the couch, morning coffee by the window overlooking the park. For all his flaws, Marcus had been my anchor in Chicago after our parents moved to Arizona. We'd shared inside jokes, holiday traditions, and the unique shorthand of siblings who grew up navigating the same family dynamics. Now I was stepping into a future where, for the first time, my life wouldn't be defined in relation to my family's expectations or my brother's shadow. The realization brought an unexpected wave of emotion. Not regret, but a complex mixture of anticipation, anxiety, and something like grief for the simplicity I was leaving behind. I was exchanging the known, however imperfect, for the vast uncertainty of a new city, a challenging job, and an identity I was still discovering. My flight to New York left at 9 a.m. the next morning. Marcus had promised to drive me to the airport, a final gesture of brotherly duty. When my alarm went off at 6 a.m., I found him already in the kitchen making coffee. Couldn't sleep, he mumbled when I appeared with my luggage. Figured you'd Want coffee before we go? We drove to O'Hare in relative silence, the early morning traffic lighter than usual. As we approached the departure terminal, Marcus cleared his throat. Listen, Liv, I know things have been weird between us lately. He kept his eyes fixed on the road. I just want you to know that I'm proud of you. This job sounds incredible, even if I don't really understand how you landed it. The compliment, hedged as it was, represented significant growth from the brother who'd so casually dismissed me a month ago. Thank you, I said simply. And, he continued, pulling up to the curb, if New York doesn't work out, for whatever reason, you'll figure something out. You're more capable than I gave you credit for. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was as close as Marcus would likely come. I leaned over and gave him a quick hug. I'll let you know when I'm settled. He helped me unload my bags, and then I was walking into the terminal alone, the weight of my new beginning propelling me forward. New York greeted me with characteristic indifference, a light rain, impatient taxi drivers, and streets crowded, with people too busy with their own lives to notice another newcomer. The temporary housing Archer had arranged was a furnished one-bedroom in Chelsea, small by Chicago standards, but luxurious compared to what I could have afforded on my own. Standing in the middle of the sparse but stylish apartment, luggage still, by the door, I was hit with the enormity of what I'd done. I'd uprooted my entire life based on a job offer that would challenge every professional skill I had, and some I hadn't yet developed. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Hargrove. Welcome to New York. Looking forward to seeing you Monday at 9 a.m. Dress code, business professional. Monday. 3 days to prepare for my first day in a role that people with twice my experience would find challenging. I spent the weekend obsessively reviewing my notes, familiarizing myself with Archer's recent content, and researching each member of the team I'd be leading. The team. That was the most intimidating part. According to the org chart HR had sent, I would be overseeing 7 people, most of them older and more experienced than me. How would they react to a 28-year-old director from outside the company? Would they question my authority or, worse, undermine me while I was trying to establish myself? By Monday morning, I had cycled through every possible worst-case scenario and come out the other side with a clarity born of necessity. I could only control my own preparation and attitude. Everything else would unfold as it would. Dressed in a new charcoal suit, my first purchase with the relocation bonus, I arrived at Archer Tower 30 minutes early, using the time to calm my nerves in a coffee shop across the street. At precisely 1:50 a.m., I walked through the revolving doors, shoulders back, chin up, projecting a confidence I hoped would eventually feel genuine. Rebecca met me in the lobby today, accompanied by a young man carrying 2 security badges. Olivia, welcome officially to Archer Media. She handed me one of the badges. This gives you access to all the floors you'll need. Ryan here will show you to your office and help you get set up with IT. I'll come find you at 10:30 to introduce you to your team. My office. The word sent a thrill through me. Not a cubicle or a shared workspace, but an actual office with a door and my name on it. Ryan led me to the 35th floor, chatting amicably about the building's amenities and the best lunch spots nearby. We stepped off the elevator into an open-concept workspace filled with sleek desks and glass-walled offices around the perimeter. The digital division is expanding, so you're in the East Wing, Ryan explained, leading me past curious glances from early arrivals. Here we are. The office was modest but impressive, glass walls with privacy film on the lower half, a modern desk, ergonomic chair, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the Manhattan skyline. A small plaque beside the door read, Olivia Mitchell, Director of Digital Strategy. Rebecca asked me to give you an hour to get settled before the team meeting, Ryan said, setting up my laptop and phone. Your schedule is already in the system. First week is mostly onboarding meetings, but you have a 1:30 with James Wilson today. The CEO wanted to meet on my first day. No pressure at all. Left alone, I took a moment to absorb the reality of where I was. Just 5 weeks ago, I had been a junior strategist sharing an apartment with my dismissive brother. Now I had an office, with a view in one of the most prestigious media companies in New York. The speed of the transformation was dizzying. At 10:30 sharp, Rebecca appeared at my door. "Ready to meet your team? They're gathered in conference room B." Walking into that conference room was among the most intimidating moments of my life. 7 pairs of eyes turned to assess me, some curious, others skeptical, a few openly hostile. They ranged in age from mid-20s to early 50s, a diverse group united only by their expertise in digital media and their uncertainty about their new boss. "Team, this is Olivia Mitchell, our new Director of Digital Strategy," Rebecca announced. Olivia comes to us from Glendale Media in Chicago, where she developed innovative approaches to integrated marketing that caught our attention. I'll let her introduce herself properly. As Rebecca stepped back, I moved to the front of the room, conscious of every gesture and expression. This first impression would set the tone for my entire leadership tenure. "Good morning," I began, making eye contact with each person. "I'm excited to join Archer and to work with this team specifically. I've researched your backgrounds, and the level of talent in this room is extraordinary." A few expressions softened slightly, but most remained guarded. "I know what you're thinking," I continued, deciding transparency was the best approach. "You're wondering why Archer hired an outsider instead of promoting from within. You're questioning whether I have the experience to lead this team effectively. Those are valid concerns." This direct acknowledgement of the elephant in the room caused a subtle shift in the atmosphere, surprise replacing some of the skepticism. I don't have all the answers, and I won't pretend to. What I do have is a clear vision for how Archer can revolutionize digital media and the determination to make that vision reality. I'll need your expertise, your candor, and your collaboration to succeed. I moved to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. Rather than telling you my plans, I'd like to start by hearing yours. What projects are you most excited about? What obstacles are preventing your best work? Where do you see untapped opportunities? For a moment, no one spoke. Then a woman in her 40s, Linda Chen, my research had told me she was the most senior member of the team, leaned forward. "We've been working on an interactive content platform for 6 months," she said carefully. "It's ready for beta testing, but we're waiting on approval from the previous leadership." "Tell me about it," I said, writing "interactive platform" on the board. Slowly, the ice broke. For the next hour, the team shared their projects, frustrations, and ideas. I asked questions, took notes, and most importantly, listened. By the end of the meeting, the tension had noticeably decreased. We weren't a cohesive unit yet, but we had taken the first step. As the team filed out, Linda lingered behind. "That was unexpected," she said. "Most new directors come in with a predetermined agenda they want to impose." "I have an agenda," I admitted. "But I'd be foolish to ignore the insights of the people closest to the work. You've been here 5 years. You know things about Archer's audience and capabilities that I couldn't possibly understand yet." She studied me for a moment, then nodded, slightly. "We'll see how it goes. Good luck with James this afternoon. He can be intense." With that cryptic warning, she left me to prepare for my meeting with the CEO, wondering if I had made any inroads with my new team or simply postponed their judgment until I inevitably made my first mistake. The meeting with James Wilson was scheduled for precisely 30 minutes, a clear message about the value of the CEO's time. I arrived 5 minutes early, portfolio in hand, to find his assistant vigorously typing at a sleek desk outside an imposing corner office. "Olivia Mitchell for Mr. Wilson," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The assistant, a polished man, in his 30s with an impeccable suit, looked up with a practiced smile. "He's on a call. You can wait over there." He gestured to a small seating area with a view of the Manhattan skyline. I used those minutes to collect my thoughts, reviewing the notes I'd taken during the team meeting. The interactive platform Linda had mentioned seemed promising, a way for readers to customize their content experience based on interests and reading patterns. If executed well, it could revolutionize how Archer delivered personalized content and significantly increase user engagement metrics. Ms. Mitchell? The assistant's voice interrupted my thoughts. Mr. Wilson will see you now. James Wilson's office was minimalist but impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass desk with nothing on it except a laptop and a single notebook, and a small seating area with modern leather chairs. The man himself stood as I entered, his tall frame accentuated by a perfectly tailored suit. At around 50, with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes, he embodied the image of a successful media executive. Olivia, welcome to Archer. His handshake was firm but not aggressive. How was your first morning? Productive, I replied, taking the seat he indicated. I met with the digital team and got a comprehensive overview of their current projects. His eyebrow raised slightly. And your assessment. Direct question, direct answer, no hedging. There's substantial talent and several promising initiatives, particularly the interactive content platform, but they've been operating without clear strategic direction, which has created inefficiencies and competing priorities. Wilson nodded, studying me with an intensity that made me glad I'd done my homework. And what do you plan to do about that? In the short term, I'll establish clear objectives and success metrics for each project, prioritizing those with the highest potential impact on user engagement and revenue. I opened my portfolio and handed him a one-page summary I'd prepared during lunch. By the end of the week, I'll have a 30, 60, 90-day plan for your review, focusing on quick wins and foundational changes. He glanced at the document, then set it aside. Impressive preparation. Most new directors spend their first week getting lost between floors and learning where the coffee machines are. I smiled, but didn't let the compliment distract me. I don't have the luxury of a gentle onboarding period. The digital landscape changes too quickly, and Archer needs to accelerate its transformation to stay competitive. For the next 20 minutes, Wilson fired questions about everything from content monetization strategies to my views on emerging technologies. I answered each one directly, acknowledging when I didn't have complete information, but outlining how I'd approach finding solutions. As our time drew to a close, Wilson leaned back in his chair. Rebecca and Taylor spoke highly of your vision, but they had concerns about your management experience. How do you plan to lead a team of people who have been at Archer longer than you've been in the workforce? It was the question I'd been expecting, the one that addressed the elephant in the room. By recognizing that technical expertise and leadership are different skill sets, I replied. My team members are experts in their domains, and I won't pretend to match their specialized knowledge. My role is to provide strategic direction, remove obstacles, and create an environment where their expertise can drive innovation. Wilson's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. Approval, perhaps, or at least recalibrated expectations. Well said. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. I look forward to seeing your 90-day plan. As I returned to my office, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How's the big job going? Apartment still standing without you. It was his version of checking in, part genuine concern, part reminder that he expected me to struggle without his guidance. I tucked the phone away without responding. My Chicago life felt increasingly distant, like a story I'd read about someone else. Here, in this glass-walled office with my name on the door, I was becoming a different version of myself. More confident, more focused, more determined to prove that I belonged exactly where I was. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and late nights researching Archer's competitors and market position. By Friday, I had completed my promised 90-day plan, a comprehensive document outlining immediate priorities, resource allocations, and measurable objectives for the digital division. Rebecca reviewed it first, offering pointed feedback that I incorporated before submitting the final version to Wilson. His response came within hours, a single-line email that read simply, "Approved. Implement and report weekly progress." With official approval secured, I called my first full team meeting on Monday morning. The conference room held the same 7 faces, but the atmosphere had shifted from skeptical to cautiously attentive. They'd had a week to observe me, to gauge whether I was just another executive with big talk and little substance, or someone worth following. "I've submitted our strategic plan to leadership and it's been approved," I began, distributing printed copies. "This outlines our priorities for the next 90 days, including resource allocations and success metrics." Linda Chen flipped through the document, her expression carefully neutral. "The interactive platform is listed as our top priority." "Yes," I confirmed. "Based on what I've seen, it has the highest potential impact on both user engagement and subscription conversion. I want it launched within 30 days. The team exchanged glances. A younger team member, Ryan Martinez, one of the front-end developers, spoke up. "The previous director said we needed another quarter of development before launch." "The previous director was being excessively cautious," I replied. "I reviewed the platform over the weekend. The core functionality is solid. We'll launch as a beta to a limited user segment, gather feedback, and iterate. Waiting for perfection is a luxury we don't have in the current market." My directness seemed to surprise them, but I noticed a few subtle nods of agreement. For the next hour, we went through each priority, assigning responsibilities and deadlines. By the end, there was a palpable shift in energy. The team had a clear direction and, perhaps more importantly, permission to move forward with projects they believed in. As everyone filed out, Linda lingered again. 30 days is aggressive," she said once we were alone. "But doable," I replied. "You built something remarkable. I want users experiencing it, not just hearing about it in development meetings." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "We'll make it happen." That exchange marked a turning point with my team. Over the next 3 weeks, I saw a transformation in how they responded. Meetings became more productive, ideas flowed more freely, and progress accelerated beyond my expectations. They weren't just following my direction, they were bringing their own innovation to the table, energized by having their work prioritized and protected from bureaucratic delays. The interactive platform launched exactly 28 days after that meeting, initially to 10,000 selected users. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with engagement metrics exceeding our projections by 35%. When I presented the results at the executive leadership meeting, even the most skeptical directors couldn't argue with the numbers. As the 30-day mark of my tenure approached, I found myself settling into a rhythm. My days were challenging but fulfilling, filled with the kind of substantive work I'd always craved. My team had begun to trust my judgment, and I was learning to trust their expertise. The temporary apartment in Chelsea had started to feel like home, decorated with small touches that reflected my emerging New York identity. One evening, as I was working late finalizing our 60-day progress report, Rebecca stopped by my office. "You should know," she said without preamble, "that James mentioned your platform launch in the board meeting today. He called it exactly the kind of innovation Archer needs to stay ahead of the curve." Coming from Wilson, this was effusive. Praise. "That's good to hear." "More than good," Rebecca replied. "James doesn't give compliments easily, especially to new directors." She leaned against the doorframe. "The 90-day probationary period was mostly a formality, but consider it officially waived. The role is fully yours." The relief and pride that washed over me was profound. I had gambled everything on this opportunity, and the bet was paying off. "Thank you for taking a chance on me," I said. "I know I wasn't the conventional choice," Rebecca smiled slightly. Conventional choices rarely lead to exceptional outcomes. Keep proving us right. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and HR asked me to remind you that your temporary housing allocation ends in 6 weeks. They can help with finding a permanent place if you need assistance. After she left, I stood by the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline now glittering with evening lights. 6 weeks to find a permanent home in New York. The thought should have been daunting, but instead, it filled me with a quiet excitement. This city, once just a distant dream, was becoming mine. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, my parents' number. I hesitated, then answered. Livy. My mom's voice filled the line, warm and familiar. We've been trying to reach you for days. Marcus said, You've moved to New York for some big job? I hadn't spoken to my parents since the move, partly because of the chaos of starting the new position, but also because I wasn't sure how to explain the dramatic shift in my circumstances. They had always deferred to Marcus's assessment of situations, viewing him as the practical, responsible one. I did, I confirmed. I'm now the director of digital strategy at Archer Media. Director? That sounds important. The surprise in her voice was evident. Marcus mentioned something about a marketing position, but he didn't say it was at the director level. Of course he hadn't. It's a senior leadership role, I explained. I oversee the digital division and report directly to the CMO. Well, that's wonderful, honey. Her tone shifted from confused to impressed. Your father and I are so proud. We should come visit you once you're settled, maybe during the holidays? The idea of hosting my parents in New York, showing them the life I was building, unexpectedly appealed to me. I'd like that, I said. I should have a permanent place by then. After we hung up, I returned to my report with renewed focus. The aita validation from Wilson and Rebecca had reinforced what I was beginning to truly believe. I belonged here, in this role, in this city. The doubts that had plagued me, and that Marcus had so readily reinforced, were fading with each successful initiative and strategic decision. 2 months after being kicked out of my apartment, I had transformed a personal crisis into the catalyst for professional reinvention. The woman who had once been defined by her brother's low expectations was now defining herself through her own vision and achievements. And this was just the beginning. By the 3-month mark at Archer Media, I had settled into a rhythm that felt both challenging and natural. The interactive platform had moved from beta to full launch, attracting industry attention and significantly boosting user engagement metrics. My team had expanded to 11 members, with budget approval to hire 3 more specialists in the coming quarter. My 90-day review with Rebecca and the executive committee had resulted in an expanded mandate and resources. On a crisp October morning, almost exactly 6 months since Marcus had told me I needed to move out, I stood in the lobby of a sleek, high-rise in Brooklyn Heights, waiting for the real estate agent to show me what would potentially become my permanent home. After viewing countless apartments across Manhattan and Brooklyn, I had narrowed my search to 2 options. This 2-bedroom with a view of the Manhattan skyline was my favorite, though slightly beyond what I'd initially planned to spend. What do you think? Asked Sandra, the real estate agent, as we toured the space. The southern exposure means great natural light all day, and the building amenities are among the best in the neighborhood. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, taking in the panoramic view of the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan skyline beyond. It's perfect, I said simply. 2 hours later, I had submitted my application and deposit. By the end of the week, I was approved, my Archer salary and title opening doors that would have been firmly closed to my former self. The following weekend, I moved in, my modest possessions barely filling the spacious rooms. Standing in my new living room that evening, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and newly delivered furniture, I felt a surge of pride that went beyond professional accomplishment. This apartment, with its hardwood floors and spectacular views, represented something I hadn't fully grasped until that moment: complete independence, earned through my own efforts and choices. I took a photo of the sunset view and texted it to Diane with the caption, "Greetings from my new place. Thanks for pushing me out of the nest." Her response came quickly, "Knew you'd land on your feet. Next time I'm in NYC, I expect a tour and expensive wine." The doorbell rang, interrupting my moment of reflection. Opening it, I found Linda Chen holding a bottle of champagne. "Traditional housewarming," she said, offering the bottle. "Though I was expecting more furniture." I laughed, inviting her in. "Delivery schedule got delayed. The dining table comes next week." In the 3 months we'd worked together, Linda had transformed from skeptical team member to valuable ally. Her technical expertise complemented my strategic vision, and her institutional knowledge of Archer had helped me navigate the company's complex politics. "Nice place," she commented, looking around. "Director salary treating you well, I see." "It's still an adjustment," I admitted, fetching glasses from a box in the kitchen. 6 months ago, I was sharing an apartment with my brother and scraping by on entry-level pay. Linda raised an eyebrow. "The famous brother who kicked you out? You've mentioned him a few times?" I hadn't realized I'd referenced Marcus in conversation. "Not one of my favorite topics," I said, pouring the champagne. "But yes, that brother." "To unexpected evictions and the opportunities they create," Linda said, raising her glass in toast. We spent the evening talking shop and getting to know each other beyond our professional roles. Linda had been at Archer for 5 years, passed over twice for promotion despite spearheading several successful initiatives. Her frankness about the company's gender bias in leadership positions explained some of her initial skepticism toward me. "I thought you were another connected hire," she admitted. "Someone's niece or family friend given a title beyond their qualifications." "And now?" I asked, curious about how she perceived me after 3 months. "Now I think you're exactly what Archer needed, someone with fresh perspective and the courage to actually implement change." She studied me over her glass. "Your brother did you a favor, in a weird way." The observation struck me as profoundly true. Marcus's cavalier dismissal had forced me to reimagine what was possible, pushing me toward opportunities I might otherwise have considered beyond my reach. The following Monday brought a new challenge. James Wilson called an emergency leadership meeting to announce that Vertex Innovations, Archer's parent company, was accelerating its digital transformation initiatives across all subsidiaries. Each division would need to present comprehensive digitization strategies to the board in 3 weeks. "Olivia," Wilson said, turning to me as the meeting concluded, "I want you to lead this for Archer. Your digital division has outperformed every other team in terms of innovation and execution. Expand your thinking to encompass the entire company's digital presence." The assignment was a vote of confidence, but also a significant elevation in responsibility. Instead of just my division, I would need to create a comprehensive strategy for Archer's entire operation: editorial, advertising, subscription services, and content distribution. I spent that evening in my new apartment, laptop open, mapping out a plan of attack. This was an opportunity to cement my position at Archer and potentially accelerate my career trajectory even further. By midnight, I had a framework and a list of key stakeholders across departments whose input I would need to gather. The next 3 weeks were among the most intense of my professional life. I conducted stakeholder interviews across every department, analyzed competitor strategies, and assembled a cross-functional team to develop an integrated digital roadmap. Sleep became a luxury, and my newly furnished apartment saw little of me beyond the late hours when I would collapse into bed, only to rise before dawn and continue working. Linda proved invaluable during this period, helping coordinate the technical aspects of the strategy while I focused on the business implications and presentation narrative. We developed a digital transformation plan that wasn't just about technology, but about fundamentally reimagining how Archer created and delivered value to its audience and advertisers. 3 days before the board presentation, I received an unexpected email from Marcus. The subject line read simply, "Job search." "Hey Liv, hope NYC is treating you well. I'm considering a career change and saw that Archer Media has some openings in their marketing department. Since you work there now, still weird to type that, I thought I'd see if you have any contacts or advice. Things at Brennan and Associates aren't going as expected, and Emily's been pushing me to try something new. Thought maybe the East Coast might be worth exploring. Let me know." Marcus. I stared at the email, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me. Marcus was asking for my help. The brother who had always positioned himself as my advisor, my practical guide through adult life, was now seeking my professional assistance. The irony was almost too perfect. More surprising was my lack of resentment. 6 months ago, I might have felt vindictive satisfaction at his career struggles, or anxiety about him potentially invading the new life I'd built. Now, those reactions seemed petty and unnecessary. My success at Archer wasn't fragile enough to be threatened by Marcus's presence, and my growth wasn't defined by his recognition or lack thereof. I closed the email without responding, deciding to focus on the board presentation first. Marcus's job search could wait until after I'd secured this next professional milestone. The morning of the presentation arrived with a mixture of nervous energy and confident preparation. I had rehearsed extensively, anticipated potential questions, and refined my delivery to be both authoritative and accessible to board members who might not fully grasp technical concepts. The boardroom at Vertex headquarters was intimidating, larger and more formal than Archer's, with a massive table surrounded by serious-faced executives representing various subsidiaries and the parent company itself. I recognized Archer's leadership team, including Wilson, but most faces were unfamiliar. Next presentation is from Olivia Mitchell, Director of Digital Strategy at Archer Media, announced Robert Langford, Vertex's CEO. Ms. Mitchell will outline Archer's digital transformation roadmap. Taking my place at the front of the room, I felt a momentary flash of imposter syndrome. This was the biggest stage of my career, filled with people who had decades more experience than me. Then I remembered Linda's words about being exactly what Archer needed, and my confidence returned. "Good morning," I began, my voice steady. "Digital transformation isn't about incremental improvements to existing processes. It's about fundamentally reimagining how we create and deliver value in a connected world." For the next 30 minutes, I walked the board through Archer's comprehensive digital strategy, from content creation and distribution to monetization and audience engagement. I outlined specific initiatives, resource requirements, and measurable outcomes, emphasizing both short-term wins and long-term competitive advantages. When I finished, there was a moment of silence, then Robert Langford leaned forward. "Impressive presentation, Ms. Mitchell. Your approach to integrating editorial and technology operations is particularly interesting. How would you address the cultural resistance that typically accompanies such significant changes?" The question opened a thoughtful discussion about change management and organizational alignment. I found myself engaged in substantive dialogue with some of the most powerful executives in the media industry, holding my own and earning visible respect from even the most skeptical board members. As the meeting concluded, Wilson approached, with Robert Langford at his side. "Olivia, Robert would like a word." "Ms. Mitchell," Langford said, "your presentation was exactly the kind of forward thinking we need across all Vertex subsidiaries. I'd like you to join our digital transformation task force, a small group of leaders coordinating these efforts across our portfolio companies." The invitation was significant. Task force membership would mean exposure to senior leadership across Vertex and opportunities to shape digital strategy at the corporate level. "I'd be honored," I replied, already mentally calculating how to balance this new responsibility with my existing commitments at Archer. "Excellent," Langford said. "The task force meets monthly, starting next week. James will ensure your Archer responsibilities are adjusted accordingly." As they walked away, Wilson gave me a subtle nod of approval. "Well done," he said quietly. "You've made quite an impression." Later that afternoon, I returned to my office to find an email from HR. "Following your successful board presentation, we are pleased to inform you that your position has been upgraded to Vice President of Digital Strategy, effective immediately." The FAFCA promotion brought with it a substantial salary increase, expanded responsibilities, and a larger team. Less than 6 months after Marcus had kicked me out of our shared apartment, I had risen from junior strategist to vice president at one of the most prestigious media companies in the country. That evening, as I celebrated privately in my Brooklyn apartment, I finally responded to Marcus's email. "Marcus, thanks for reaching out. Archer does have some openings that might be a good fit for your background. HR has my endorsement to forward relevant positions to qualified candidates. Send your resume to the address below and reference my name in your cover letter. While I can't guarantee anything, I'm happy to put in a good word if appropriate positions open up. Wishing you success in your search, Olivia Mitchell, Vice President, Digital Strategy, Archer Media." I deliberately used my new title and formal signature, not out of pettiness, but because it represented a truth both Marcus and I needed to acknowledge. Our relationship had fundamentally changed, professionally and personally. Whatever happened next would be on new terms, defined by mutual respect rather than outdated family dynamics. 2 weeks after my promotion to vice president, I found myself in a much larger office on the 47th floor of Archer Tower. The executive suite featured sweeping views of Manhattan, sleek furnishings, and an adjoining conference room for my now expanded team of 18. The transition had been swift, a physical manifestation of my changing status within the company. My new responsibilities included overseeing not just the digital strategy division, but also coordinating with editorial, product development, and revenue teams to ensure cohesive implementation of our transformation initiatives. I had hired 2 associate directors to manage day-to-day operations, allowing me to focus on strategic direction and corporate-level decisions. Linda had been promoted to technical director, a well-deserved recognition of her expertise and contributions. Our working relationship had evolved into a genuine friendship, one of the few I'd developed since moving to New York. Between our demanding schedules and my Vertex task force commitments, neither of us had much time for social lives outside of work. On a Tuesday morning in early December, I was reviewing applications for a new executive assistant position. My expanded role came with additional administrative demands that were consuming too much of my strategic bandwidth. HR had screened initial candidates and forwarded 10 resumes for my consideration. I was halfway through the stack when a familiar name stopped me cold: Marcus Mitchell. For a moment, I thought I was seeing things, a trick of exhaustion after too many late nights. But there it was, unmistakably my brother's resume, applying not for a marketing position as he'd initially mentioned, but for the role of executive assistant to the VP of Digital Strategy. My executive assistant, I sat, back in my chair, a surge of conflicting emotions washing over me. Marcus had a business degree and MBA, plus experience in account management at his previous firm. Nothing in his background suggested interest in an administrative role. This was clearly a desperate attempt to get his foot in the door at Archer, likely after being rejected for the marketing positions he'd originally targeted. More surprising was that HR had forwarded his application at all. While qualified on paper, he was dramatically overqualified for an assistant position. Someone should have flagged this as an inappropriate match. I picked up my phone and called Erica in HR. "The executive assistant applications you sent over? Did you notice that one of the candidates is named Mitchell, as in sharing my last name?" "Oh." Erica sounded genuinely surprised. "I didn't make the connection. Is this a relative?" "My brother," I said flatly. I mentioned his interest in Archer to HR a few weeks ago, but he was exploring marketing roles, not administrative positions. That's awkward, Erica admitted. He would have submitted through our general application portal. The system automatically sorts candidates based on keyword matches in their resumes. Since he listed administrative coordination among his skills, he likely got filtered into the EA candidate pool. I glanced back at his resume. Sure enough, buried in his skills section was administrative coordination, a corporate euphemism. He'd probably included to check boxes for automated screening systems. Did he mention being related to you in his cover letter? Erica asked. No, I replied, scanning the document. There's nothing here indicating he knows me at all, much less that we're siblings. Do you want me to remove him from consideration? I can cite the potential conflict of interest. I considered this for a moment. The simplest solution would be to have Erica filter him out, allowing me to avoid the awkwardness entirely. Yet something about that felt like taking the easy way out, like reverting to old patterns where difficult confrontations were sidestepped rather than addressed. Actually, I'll handle it, I decided. Let's proceed with the normal interview process. If his application meets the criteria, include him in the first-round interviews. After hanging up, I studied Marcus's resume more carefully. Reading between the lines of his professional history, I could see evidence of the struggles he'd hinted at. His most recent position at Brennan and Associates had lasted only 8 months, and his prior role showed no progression or promotion over 3 years. His career had stagnated while mine had accelerated beyond anything either of us could have imagined a year ago. My intercom buzzed, interrupting my thoughts. Ms. Mitchell, your 10:30 with the digital product team is starting. Thank you, I'll be right there. I set Marcus's resume aside, deciding to let the standard process play out. If HR determined he met the qualifications for a first-round interview, so be it. The next week passed in a blur of strategic planning sessions, quarterly budget reviews, and my first official Vertex task force meeting. I had nearly forgotten about the executive assistant search until Friday afternoon, when Erica called to inform me that the first-round interviews had been completed. We've narrowed it down to 5 candidates for your in-person interviews next week, she said. I've scheduled them for Tuesday, 30 minutes each. Send me the finalist profiles so I can review them before the interviews, I requested. All ready. Done. You'll find them in your email. She paused. And yes, your brother made the cut. His phone interview scored in the top 3. The HR team had no idea about your connection. They just evaluated his responses objectively. I thanked her and opened the email, finding 5 candidate summaries with interview notes. Marcus had apparently impressed the screening team with his organizational skills, analytical thinking, and communication abilities. All qualities I knew he possessed, though I'd never imagined them applied in a support role to his younger sister. Tuesday. Arrived with a light snow falling over Manhattan, dusting the city with a tranquil white coating that contrasted with my internal unease. I had prepared standard questions for all candidates, determined to keep the process fair regardless of personal connections. The first 3 interviews went smoothly. 2 experienced executive assistants and a former project coordinator, all with relevant skills and professional demeanors. At 2:30, my temporary assistant announced, "Your next appointment is here, Marcus Mitchell." I took a deep breath, straightened my blazer, and nodded. Send him in. The man who walked through my office door looked simultaneously familiar and foreign. Marcus wore a sharply tailored suit I didn't recognize, his hair styled differently. Then I remembered. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him in Chicago, his face more angular, his posture more careful than confident. His expression when he saw me was priceless, a rapidly shifting mixture of shock, embarrassment, and attempted recovery. Clearly, he hadn't known whose position he was interviewing for. Olivia? The professional mask he'd likely prepared crumbled instantly. Mr. Mitchell, I replied evenly, extending my hand. Thank you for coming in today. Please have a seat. He shook my hand automatically, confusion still evident in his eyes as he lowered himself into the chair opposite my desk. I didn't. The job posting just said VP of Digital Strategy. I had no idea it was you. Archer has several VPs, I acknowledged, though I'm the only one in digital strategy. I gestured toward the window view of Manhattan. Quite a coincidence. Marcus's eyes darted around my executive office, taking in the trappings of success I'd achieved in the months since he'd last seen me. "You've done well for yourself," he said finally. "Vice President, that's impressive." "Thank you." I picked up his resume from my desk. "I'm curious, though. Your background is in account, management and business development. An executive assistant role seems like an unusual career direction." His cheeks flushed slightly. "The job market is tougher than I expected. I've been applying to marketing and account management positions for months, including several at Archer. This was the first interview invitation I received." The admission must have cost him something. Marcus had always been proud, particularly about his career achievements. To acknowledge struggling professionally, especially to me, indicated how significantly his circumstances had changed. "I see," I said. "And would you genuinely be interested in an administrative role, or is this simply a foot in the door?" He hesitated, clearly weighing whether honesty or diplomacy would serve him better. "Initially, it was just to get into Archer," he admitted. "But after researching the company more thoroughly, I realized that supporting someone with strategic vision could be valuable experience, especially given Archer's growth trajectory." I nodded, appreciating his candor even if his reasoning was self-serving. "Executive assistant roles are demanding," I said. "They require exceptional organizational skills, discretion, and the ability to anticipate needs before they're articulated. The right candidate becomes a true strategic partner, not just an administrative support." "I understand," Marcus replied, sitting straighter. "I believe my business background would actually be an asset in that regard. I can approach the role with a strategic mindset rather than just task management." It was a good answer, logical, confident without being arrogant. The Marcus I knew was emerging from beneath the initial shock, adapting to the unexpected situation with the resilience that had always been one of his genuine strengths. For the next 20 minutes, I conducted a standard interview, asking the same questions I'd asked previous candidates. Marcus answered each thoughtfully, occasionally referencing relevant experiences from his prior roles. If I hadn't known him personally, I would have considered him a strong contender for the position. As our scheduled time drew to a close, I closed my notebook. "Do you have any questions for me?" Marcus hesitated, clearly struggling with the surreal nature of our situation. "Just one," he said finally. "Is this too weird? Me working directly for you, given our history?" It was the elephant in the room, addressed with uncharacteristic directness. A year ago, Marcus would have sidestepped such potential vulnerability. Perhaps his recent challenges had fostered growth I hadn't given him credit for. "That's a fair question," I replied. "Professional boundaries would be essential, of course. Our personal history, both positive and negative, would need to remain separate from our working relationship." I paused, then decided complete honesty was appropriate. 6 months ago, it would have been impossible. But I'm not the same person who left Chicago, Marcus. My identity and confidence aren't defined by our family dynamics anymore. He nodded slowly, understanding the subtle shift in power that had occurred. Not just professionally, but personally. "For what it's worth," he said quietly. "I think I underestimated you. For a long time." The simple acknowledgement was perhaps the most genuine apology Marcus was capable of offering. I accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you for coming in today, Mr. Mitchell," I said, returning to professional formality as I stood and extended my hand again. "HR will be in touch regarding next steps in the process." Marcus rose, shaking my hand with a firmer grip than before. "Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Mitchell." As he turned to leave, I found myself saying, "Marcus?" He paused at the door, looking back. "Regardless of the outcome of this particular position, don't sell yourself short. Your skills are valuable in the right context." A flicker of the brother I'd grown up with appeared in his slight smile. "Seems to run in the family," he replied, before stepping out into the reception area. After he left, I sat in silence for several minutes, processing the strange full-circle moment we'd just experienced. 6 months ago, I had been the one seeking approval and validation, while Marcus had held the power to disrupt my living situation with casual disregard. Now, he was the one hoping for an opportunity, while I sat in judgment of his professional value. Life's symmetry could be both poetic and disorienting. My final candidate interview concluded 30 minutes after Marcus left, leaving me with 5 qualified options for the executive assistant position. Under normal circumstances, I would have taken a day to review my notes, compare strengths and weaknesses, and make a decision based on objective criteria. But these weren't normal circumstances. I called Linda, needing an outside perspective. "Do you have time for a quick coffee?" 20 minutes later, we were seated in the small cafe on the mezzanine level of Archer Tower, away from the executive floors where conversations could too easily be overheard. "So your brother, the one who kicked you out and basically dismissed your capabilities, just interviewed to be your assistant without realizing you were the VP?" Linda clarified, a hint of amusement in her voice. "That's either cosmic justice or the setup for a sitcom." "It's definitely unexpected," I agreed. "And now I don't know what to do. Professionally speaking, he's qualified. Overqualified, actually. But personally, it would be weird as hell," Linda finished for me. "Having your brother fetch your coffee and manage your calendar after he spent years treating you like his less capable little sister." When she put it that way, the situation did sound absurd. Yet something about simply dismissing Marcus's application felt wrong, like taking the easy way out of a complex situation. "There's also the fact that he genuinely needs a job," I said. "From what I gathered, things haven't been going well professionally. He and Emily moved to New York 3 weeks ago, hoping for better opportunities." Linda studied me over her coffee cup. "You know, most people in your position would enjoy the reversal. Maybe even use it as an opportunity for some well-deserved payback." "I'm not interested in revenge," I replied, surprising myself with how true the statement felt. That version of me, the one who might have wanted Marcus to suffer for not believing in me, she doesn't exist anymore. She didn't survive the move to New York. "So what are you interested in?" Linda asked. I considered the question carefully. "Resolution, I suppose. Moving forward in a way that acknowledges what happened without being defined by it." Linda nodded slowly. "You've grown a lot in 6 months." "We both have, maybe." I recalled the moment of vulnerability in Marcus's admission that he had underestimated me. "The thing is, there's another candidate who's probably better suited for the role, Amelia Santos. Her background in executive support is extensive, and her references are stellar." "Sounds like you've made your decision," Linda observed. "Almost," I agreed. "There's just one more piece I need to figure out." Back in my office, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to James Wilson, requesting a brief meeting for the following morning. The second was to Erica in HR, informing her of my executive assistant selection and discussing an alternative placement for another candidate. By Wednesday afternoon, everything was arranged. I sent an email to Marcus requesting a follow-up meeting on Thursday at 11 a.m. His response came quickly, professional, prompt, with no indication of our personal connection. Whatever happened next, it seemed we had both committed to maintaining appropriate boundaries. Thursday morning found me unusually reflective. 9 months had passed since that morning in Chicago when Marcus had casually informed me I needed to find my own place. In that time, I had transformed from a junior strategist with self-doubt to a vice president with growing industry recognition. The narrative of my success had taken on an almost mythic quality among ambitious young professionals at Archer. The meteoric rise of someone who'd seized opportunity and exceeded every expectation. What that narrative missed, of course, were the moments of uncertainty, the late nights questioning my capabilities, the lonely weekends in a new city where my only identity was the work I produced. Success wasn't a straight line of triumphant achievements, but a messy, complicated journey of reinvention. At precisely 11 a.m., Marcus arrived for our meeting. His expression was composed but wary as my assistant showed him into my office. "Thank you for coming back in," I began, gesturing for him to take a seat. "I wanted to discuss the executive assistant position." Marcus nodded, his posture professional, but tense. "I appreciate the consideration. After careful review of all candidates, I've decided to offer the position to someone whose experience is more specifically aligned with the administrative requirements." I kept my tone gentle but matter of fact. "Your qualifications are impressive, Marcus, but ultimately not the best match for this particular role." A flicker of disappointment crossed his face, quickly masked. "I understand. Thank you for the opportunity to interview." In our childhood, this would have been the moment where Marcus would have become defensive or dismissive, protecting his ego by diminishing the importance of whatever he'd failed to achieve. The fact that he accepted the rejection with grace suggested growth I hadn't anticipated. "That said," I continued, "I did share your resume with James Wilson, CEO of Archer Media. He's been looking to expand the business development team focusing on strategic partnerships." Marcus's expression shifted from resignation to cautious interest. "I don't understand. You have an MBA and experience in client relationship management. Those skills are valuable to Archer, just not in an administrative capacity." I handed him a folder. "Inside you'll find details about an associate director position in business development. The role would involve identifying and cultivating partnership opportunities with complementary media companies and technology platforms." He opened the folder slowly, scanning the job description with growing disbelief. This would be perfect for my background." He looked up, confusion evident. "But why would you do this, after how I treated you in Chicago?" The directness of his question deserved equal honesty in return. "Because this isn't about Chicago or our personal history. It's about making the right business decision for Archer." I paused, then added, "And because I believe in separating personal grievances from professional assessments, something I learned from watching others do the opposite." Marcus absorbed this, recognition dawning in his eyes. He understood I was referencing how he had often allowed personal bias to cloud his judgment of my capabilities. "James wants to meet with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. if you're interested," I continued. "The position reports to Sarah Calloway, VP of Business Development, not to me. We would be peers in the organizational structure, working in completely different divisions." "I don't know what to say," Marcus admitted. "You don't need to say anything right now," I replied. "Think about whether the role interests you, prepare for the interview with James, and proceed based on your own merit. That's all I'm offering. An appropriate opportunity, not a guarantee." He nodded slowly, still processing the unexpected turn of events. "Thank you, Olivia. This is more than I deserve." "It's exactly what you deserve," I corrected him. "An opportunity that matches your qualifications, nothing more or less. What happens next depends entirely on how you perform." After Marcus left, clutching the folder and looking slightly dazed, I turned my attention back to the quarterly projections waiting on my laptop. The interaction had been surreal, but also cathartic, a professional resolution to what had begun as a personal rejection. 2 weeks later, Marcus was offered and accepted the associate director position in business development. We established careful professional boundaries from the start, communicating primarily through work channels, maintaining appropriate distance in company settings, and letting our respective achievements speak for themselves. Our parents, visiting. New York for Christmas, were delighted but bewildered by the strange synchronicity that had brought both their children to the same company. Over dinner at my Brooklyn apartment, now fully furnished and feeling genuinely like home, they marveled at the coincidence. "I still can't believe you both ended up at Archer," my mother said, shaking her head in wonder. "What are the odds?" Marcus and I exchanged a glance across the table. The first moment of genuine sibling understanding we'd shared in years. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "people end up exactly where they need to be, even if the path getting there isn't what they expected." Later that evening, after our parents had returned to their hotel and Emily had excused herself to make phone calls, Marcus and I found ourselves alone on my balcony, looking out at the Brooklyn Bridge illuminated against the night sky. "I never apologized," he said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. "For what happened in Chicago, for how I handled things." "No, you didn't," I agreed, not making it easier for him. He nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke. "I'm sorry, Liv. Not just for kicking you out, but for underestimating you for so long, for assuming I knew what was best for you, for not seeing what you were capable of." The apology was simple but genuine. No qualifications, no deflections, just straightforward acknowledgement. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means something." We stood in silence for another moment, the city humming below us. 9 months had transformed not just our circumstances, but our fundamental understanding of each other. The hierarchy that had defined our relationship since childhood, Marcus the advisor and Olivia the advised, had been permanently dismantled. "How's the new apartment hunting going?" I asked, changing the subject to something lighter. Marcus grimaced. "New York real estate is brutal. Emily and I have seen 15 places, and everything is either tiny, astronomically expensive, or both." I laughed. The sound was genuine. "Welcome to New York. It gets better once you know which neighborhoods to focus on." "Any recommendations?" he asked, the question free from the condescension that would have colored it a year ago. Now, it was just one professional seeking advice from another who had navigated the same challenge. As we discussed neighborhoods and rental strategies, I realized we were having our first conversation as equals, two adults with separate lives and careers, connected by shared history, but no longer defined by it. The unexpected twist that had brought Marcus to Archer hadn't been about karmic retribution or dramatic confrontation. Instead, it had created space for something more valuable. A recalibrated relationship based on mutual respect rather than outdated patterns. Neither of us was the person we had been in that Chicago apartment. Life had reshaped us both, him through humbling setbacks, me through accelerated success. The siblings who had once shared a living space divided by misunderstanding now worked for the same company, united by professional boundaries and the beginnings of a more authentic connection. Sometimes being kicked out of your apartment leads not just to a new address, but to a completely reimagined life, one where you discover strengths you never knew you possessed and forge connections you never thought possible, even with the person who once showed you the door. Spring in New York brings a particular energy, a collective emergence from winter's constraints into possibility and renewal. As I stood at the podium in Archer Media's largest conference room, looking out at the assembled crowd of industry, leaders, journalists, and company executives, that sense of renewal felt especially poignant. "Welcome to the official launch of Archer Interactive," I began, my voice steady and confident in a way that still occasionally surprised me. "Today marks not just the introduction of a new platform, but a fundamental reimagining of how audiences engage with digital content." The initiative I was introducing represented a year of intensive development, the evolution of the interactive platform that had launched my career at Archer into a comprehensive ecosystem that seamlessly integrated personalized content, community features, and creator tools. What had begun as a simple idea in a Chicago agency had blossomed into a flagship product with the potential to transform Archer's market position. James Wilson stood at the side of the room, arms crossed, observing with his characteristic intensity. Beside him was Robert Langford from Vertex, whose early faith in my strategic vision had opened doors I'd never imagined possible. In the second row sat Linda, now my equal as Vice President of Technical Development, her steady guidance having shaped the platform's architecture from concept to reality. And in the back, leaning against the wall in his characteristic stance, was Marcus. In the 10 months since joining Archer, he had established himself as a capable associate director, leveraging his relationship-building skills to secure several valuable strategic partnerships. We maintained professional boundaries at work, no special favors, no inside tracks, but had gradually rebuilt a personal relationship on more equal footing. The future of media isn't about passive consumption, I continued, advancing to the next slide in my presentation. It's about creating spaces where audiences become participants, where storytelling becomes collaborative, and where technology enhances rather than replaces human connection. For the next 30 minutes, I guided the audience through Archer Interactive's features, business model, and growth projections. The questions that followed were thoughtful and engaged, industry leaders recognizing the platform's potential to disrupt traditional media consumption patterns. As the event concluded and attendees broke into networking groups, James approached, with Robert Langford at his side. "Impressive launch," James said, his usual economy of words conveying genuine approval. "The industry response is exactly what we hoped for." Robert nodded in agreement. "The Vertex board is particularly pleased. With the subscription model projections, this could become a blueprint for our other media properties." He glanced at his watch. "I have another commitment, but we should discuss broader implementation at next week's task force meeting." After they departed, Linda joined me at the refreshment table, grabbing 2 glasses of champagne. "To Archer Interactive," she said, offering me one, "and to the woman who wouldn't take no for an answer." I smiled, accepting the toast. "To the team that made it happen. This was never a solo project. True, but it needed your vision to get off the ground." Linda glanced toward the back of the room where Marcus was engaged in conversation with Sarah Calloway, his boss in business development. "Your brother seems to be finding his footing." "He is," I confirmed. "Sarah says he's particularly good at identifying strategic synergies with potential partners. Apparently those relationship skills that made him popular in Chicago translate well to business development." Linda studied me with her characteristic perceptiveness. "You sound genuinely pleased for him." "I am," I realized, somewhat surprised by the authenticity of the feeling. "His success doesn't diminish mine. There's room for both of us to thrive here." That evening, I hosted a small celebration at my Brooklyn apartment for the core team that had developed Archer Interactive. After years of solitary focus on career advancement, I had finally begun cultivating a personal life in New York, friendships that extended beyond professional connections, a comfortable home that reflected my personality, even a tentative dating life when my schedule permitted. As the night progressed and people began to leave, Marcus lingered behind, helping gather empty glasses and plates without being asked. A small gesture that would have been unimaginable from the brother I'd known in Chicago. "That was quite a presentation today," he said as we moved to the balcony with the last of the wine. "Industry coverage is already popping up online. Looks like Archer Interactive is going to be a major success." "That's the plan," I replied, leaning against the railing. The subscription numbers from the beta test exceeded our projections by 40%. If that holds for the public launch, we'll hit our annual targets by Q3. Marcus shook his head slightly. "It's still surreal sometimes hearing you talk like a seasoned executive. In my head, You're still the little sister who needed help with her math homework. That little sister hasn't existed for a long time, I pointed out. Maybe she never really did. Maybe you just couldn't see past your own assumptions. He winced slightly but nodded. Fair point. He swirled the wine in his glass thoughtfully. You know, Emily and I broke up. The sudden change of subject caught me off guard. I'm sorry to hear that. What happened? Nothing dramatic. We just wanted different things. He looked out at the city lights. She expected Marcus, who had everything figured out, who was climbing the corporate ladder on schedule, who knew exactly where life was heading. That guy disappeared somewhere between Chicago and New York. The admission held a vulnerability I wasn't accustomed to hearing from my brother. And how do you feel about that? I asked. Relieved, mostly, he admitted. Trying to maintain that image was exhausting. Being knocked down a few pegs? It's been humbling, but also clarifying. I see things differently now. Like what? Like how much energy I wasted trying to control perceptions instead of creating actual value. Like how quickly professional friends disappear when your status changes. He turned to face me directly. Like how I treated you, taking credit for wisdom I hadn't earned and dismissing your potential because it didn't fit my narrative. The self-awareness in his words touched me more deeply than I expected. This was a Marcus I'd never known. Reflective, honest about his limitations, capable of genuine growth. For what it's worth, I said quietly, I think this version of you is a significant upgrade. He laughed, the sound softened by the night air. Thanks. Still very much a work in progress. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, the city humming below us. Exactly 1 year had passed since that morning in our Chicago apartment when he'd told me I needed to move out. The symmetry wasn't lost on either of us. I've been thinking about what you said, Marcus continued, the day I interviewed for the assistant position, about separating personal history from professional assessment. That perspective has changed how I approach everything at Archer. It's something I learned the hard way, I replied. When you've been underestimated based on personal bias, you become very conscious of not doing the same to others. He nodded, thoughtfully. Sarah mentioned you recommended me for the Amsterdam conference next month. I was surprised, given our agreement to maintain professional distance. It wasn't personal, I clarified. The conference focuses on international media partnerships. Your recent work with European publishers makes you logically qualified. It would be unprofessional not to recommend the most suitable person just because we're related. Still, thank you, he said. I won't squander the opportunity. As the conversation shifted to the details of the Amsterdam conference and potential European expansion, I was struck by how naturally we'd settled into this new dynamic. Colleagues, with shared professional interests, and siblings with a complex but evolving personal history. The journey from that Chicago apartment to this Brooklyn balcony had been transformative for both of us, though in dramatically different ways. My path had been a meteoric rise born of determination and strategic vision. This had been a humbling reassessment followed by gradual rebuilding. Yet somehow, despite the divergent routes, we had arrived at a more authentic connection than we'd ever managed in our previous lives. 3 weeks later, I was called into James Wilson's office unexpectedly. Robert Langford was there as well, both men looking unusually serious. Olivia, James began without preamble, we've been discussing Archer's international expansion plans, particularly in the European market where Archer Interactive has shown significant early adoption. I nodded, having reviewed the European user data just that morning. The UK and German markets are particularly promising. We're seeing subscription rates triple our initial projections. Precisely, Robert agreed, which is why we've made a strategic decision. He slid a folder across the desk. We're establishing a European headquarters in London to capitalize on this momentum. We need someone with both vision and tactical expertise to lead the initiative. I opened the folder to find a detailed proposal for a new position. Executive. Vice President of International Operations, based in London, but overseeing all European expansion efforts. This represents a significant promotion, James continued. You would have full P&L responsibility for the European division and a seat on Archer's executive committee. The role reports directly to me, with a dotted line to Robert for Vertex coordination. The opportunity was extraordinary, a chance to build something from the ground up with substantial resources and autonomy. Yet it also meant leaving New York, the city where I'd discovered my professional identity and finally begun creating a personal life I valued. This is unexpected, I admitted, and flattering. I'd need some time to consider. Of course, Robert said, but we'd need your decision within 2 weeks. The European launch timeline is aggressive. Back in my office, I sat at my desk trying to process this potential new chapter. London, Executive Vice President, building an international division from scratch. The professional challenge was exactly what I craved, the next logical step in a trajectory that had already exceeded my most ambitious dreams. Yet I also felt unexpected hesitation. The life I'd built in New York over the past year had value beyond career advancement, friendships, community, a sense of belonging I hadn't fully appreciated until faced with leaving it behind. My intercom buzzed. Ms. Mitchell, you're 3 o'clock. Appointment is here. I took a deep breath, setting aside the London proposal for later consideration. Whatever I decided, the choice would be mine alone, based not on others' expectations or limitations, but on my own authentic assessment of what I wanted from the next chapter of my life. 1 year ago, being forced out of an apartment had seemed like a crisis. Today, being invited to lead an international division felt like both an opportunity and a complex choice. The difference wasn't just in the circumstances, but in who I had become. Someone defined not by others' perceptions, but by her own capabilities, achievements, and increasingly her own terms. The woman who had once been dismissed as just someone's little sister now stood at the threshold of global leadership, weighing options that would have seemed impossible in that Chicago apartment. Whatever path I chose next would be neither reaction nor rebellion, but a deliberate step forward by someone who finally, completely, knew her own worth. The London opportunity consumed my thoughts for the next week. I created detailed pros and cons lists, researched neighborhoods and living costs, and had several follow-up discussions with James about the strategic vision for European expansion. The professional case was clear. This was a career-defining opportunity that aligned perfectly with my ambitions. Yet something held me back from immediate acceptance. On a rainy Saturday morning, I found myself walking through Brooklyn Bridge Park, watching Manhattan's skyline emerge and disappear through the fog. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Coffee? Need your input on something. 30 minutes later, we sat in our favorite cafe, rain pattering against the windows. Linda listened intently as I outlined the London offer. It sounds perfect for you, she said when I finished. So what's the hesitation? I'm not entirely sure, I admitted. Professionally, it's everything I could want. And personally, I stirred my coffee, considering. I finally feel like I belong here. I have friends, favorite places, routines that matter to me. Starting over in London would be challenging, Linda finished. But you've done it before, coming from Chicago, and succeeded spectacularly. That was different, I said. I was running away from something then. Now I'd be running towards something, but also leaving things I value behind. Linda studied me thoughtfully. The difference is that now you have a choice, a real one. Before, circumstances forced your hand. Her observation crystallized something I'd been circling, the profound difference between decisions made from desperation and those made from a position of strength. 1 year ago, I'd had no choice but to leave Chicago and reinvent myself. Now, I had options, connections, and the luxury of choosing my path forward. My parents called that evening, their faces filling my laptop screen from their Arizona home. "London," my mother exclaimed. "That's incredible, Olivia. Though so far away, I haven't decided yet," I reminded her. "It's a big step." "You should take it," my father said firmly. "Opportunities like this don't come along often." My mother nodded in agreement. "We're so proud of you, honey. Who would have thought a year ago that you'd be considering an executive position overseas?" Their pride was genuine, if somewhat bewildered. They still didn't fully understand the transformation I'd undergone or the level of responsibility I now held. In their minds, I remained their somewhat cautious younger child who had suddenly, mysteriously blossomed. "Have you told Marcus about the offer?" my father asked. "Not yet," I replied. I wanted to process it myself first. After we hung up, I found myself pondering that question. Why hadn't I mentioned the opportunity to Marcus? We'd established a more honest relationship over the past months, occasionally meeting for dinner or coffee outside of work. Yet, I'd hesitated to share this potential development with him. The answer came unexpectedly during my Monday morning commute. As the subway rumbled beneath the East River, I realized I hadn't told Marcus because his opinion no longer factored into my decision-making process. Not out of resentment, but because I'd completely outgrown the need for his approval or guidance. My choices were now entirely my own. That understanding brought sudden clarity. I texted Marcus. "Free for dinner tonight? Need to discuss something." We met at a quiet restaurant in Soho, neutral territory away from both work and our respective homes. After ordering, I outlined the London opportunity without preamble. "Wow," he said when I finished. "Executive VP with international responsibility. That's remarkable, Liv." "I'm still weighing the decision," I said. "It's a significant life change, not just a career move." Marcus nodded, unusually thoughtful. "What's holding you back?" The Olivia I knew in Chicago would have jumped at this without hesitation. "The Olivia you knew in Chicago doesn't exist anymore," I replied without heat. "She was defined by limitations, others and her own. I'm not anymore." "No, you're definitely not," he agreed with a small smile. "So what will you decide?" I appreciated that he asked what I would decide, not what I should decide. Another small indicator of how our dynamic had evolved. "I'm thinking of proposing an alternative," I said, sharing my developing idea for the first time. "A hybrid approach where I establish the London office but remain based primarily in New York, traveling quarterly for extended periods." "Creating your own option," Marcus observed. "That's actually brilliant. You'd maintain your New York life while still leading the European expansion." "It would require careful structuring and strong local leadership in London," I acknowledged. "But technology makes remote executive oversight increasingly viable." "If anyone could make it work, it's you," he said. And I was struck by the genuine confidence in his voice, so different from the dismissive tolerance he'd once shown toward my capabilities. When James and Robert called me into a follow-up meeting, the next day I was prepared with a detailed proposal for the hybrid arrangement. They listened with interest as I outlined the operational structure, technology requirements, and performance metrics that would ensure success. "It's unconventional," James acknowledged when I finished. "But your track record has earned you the right to define the role parameters." Robert nodded in agreement. "Vertex is focused on outcomes, not geography. If you can deliver the European growth targets, the specific arrangement is secondary." By Friday, we had reached an agreement. I would become Executive Vice President of International Operations, based in New York but with significant time in London, particularly during the initial launch phase. I would build and train a London-based team while maintaining strategic oversight from headquarters. The announcement went out company-wide the following Monday. As congratulatory messages flooded my inbox, I stood at my office window looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The view that had once seemed so intimidating and now felt like home. My assistant interrupted my reflections. "Ms. Mitchell, your brother is here. He says it's important." Marcus entered carrying a small gift bag. "Congratulations on the promotion," he said, placing it on my desk. I thought this was appropriate for the occasion. Inside, I found a sleek leather passport holder embossed with my initials and London, New York beneath them. "For your new dual-city life," he explained. The thoughtful gift represented more than just acknowledgement of my new role. It symbolized acceptance of the path I'd carved for myself, a path different from anything he might have envisioned for me, but undeniably successful on its own terms. "Thank you," I said simply. "It's perfect." As Marcus left, I placed the passport holder in my top drawer, a tangible reminder of how completely everything had changed. 18 months ago, I had been evicted from an apartment, facing an uncertain future with limited options. Today, I was creating new arrangements within a global company, defining success on my own terms. The journey from that Chicago apartment to this executive office hadn't been simple or straightforward. It had required courage, reinvention, and willingness to bet on my own capabilities when few others would. But standing here now, planning international strategy with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was worth, I recognized a profound truth. Sometimes the moments that seem like our greatest setbacks become the catalysts for our most important transformations. Being kicked out of my apartment hadn't been the end I'd feared, but rather the beginning I'd needed. The push that launched me into a life beyond anything I could have imagined on that rainy Chicago morning when my brother told me I needed to find somewhere else to live. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.